Hello gamers, Power Word Heal here, and today we're going to be talking about the OnlyFangs incident um, that happened today. And I'll be completely honest with you right out of the gate. There's not going to be a lot of educational content to be gleaned from this. So if you're the type of person that watches the channel for the educational stuff, this might not be the video for you. But I just thought it was hilarious. I was watching this with my friends at the time. We were all laughing hysterically after this happened. And, it doesn't always have to be educational or informative, right? Sometimes you can just have fun with things. And that's kind of what we're doing here. So I thought this would be funny. Wanted to share it with you guys. And I am going to give my take on what happened, kind of who's at fault and stuff like that. Especially because in this case, I think that, the people involved that were mostly at fault have relatively thick skin. And, it's not going to be like a problem pointing out that they kind of dropped the ball. But, yeah, so I'll just play it and explain a little bit. This is OnlyFangs, by the way, if people don't know what it is. So this is like the hardcore project guild that is basically like people that don't play WoW. There's some people that play WoW in it, and then there's other people that basically have only played a little or have never played before. And the idea is we're going to try and get them onto hardcore WoW, get them to level 60, and have them do Molten Core and Blackwing Lair and stuff like that. So they've been pretty successful thus far. They've already got a raid under their belt. A couple people died. I think 5 people died the first raid. They're coming back the second raid. And this is Tyler1 in particular. He's kind of like the main character of this whole thing, the big league player that transitioned to WoW. And he survived the first raid. He kind of got his sea legs is the idea. And now he's getting to lead this raid. So he's kind of the one that's telling people what to do. And I would cue the audio, but it's like super loud and there's some profanity, so I don't know how YouTube's going to deal with that. So I'll just tell you the important bits of what was being said after, but we'll just play the clip. So Baron's doing the Inferno. Interesting part right here is that he actually takes a tick from the last part of the Inferno, which is, I believe, the part that does like 5k-ish damage or something. So kind of a huge mistake there, but warriors have so much HP that, it doesn't matter. Like, don't let anybody tell you that this is a hard class to play in this game, because it's obviously just a complete joke. But, yeah, so he takes, like, basically a huge chunk of damage there, but it's not going to matter, because he's going to get healed. And, basically, everything's going fine, right? Then the boss starts to Inferno. You can see people are running away. He basically makes the call around right here to continue to DPS and kill the boss. But there's a bit of confusion. The bomb is out, right? And, yeah, very close. And poof, bunch of dead characters. That's a lot of hours down the drain, right? So, yeah, that's basically just the clip in its raw form. And I'll kind of explain a little bit on what happened and what I think happened. So what actually killed people, the bomb did kill some people in the back there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the people up front, it was the Nova that killed them. The ramping damage, like I was saying, gets really intense. And particularly at this juncture in the encounter, none of the people, like the healers, they don't really have much mana, as you can see. Also, there was a bomb running, and the bomb was running in the back here. And then the Inferno was over here, right? So there was just a lot of confusion and not much mana to go around. So sometimes you can survive the Nova, right? But really you need a lot of concentrated focus heals, and that just wasn't going to happen in this situation. And a big focus of this has been the call that Tyler made. So Tyler made the call to stay in. And a lot of people were saying that the people who left basically were roaches. But the problem is he made the call about 2 seconds into the Nova, maybe 1 second if we want to be generous, right? I didn't go back and exactly time it, but the Nova had already started before he made the call, and people have already started to evacuate towards the back before he made the call. And you have to keep in mind that a lot of these are new players, right? So therefore, it's kind of intuitive for them to want to run away from the AOE damage, right? They did that before, and it's just a pretty natural reaction to want to run away, right? And even the experienced players that kind of know better and know that sometimes you do stay in to finish the boss in these situations, first of all, it's hardcore, right? So, you could argue that they just had the thought process of play it safe rather safe than sorry, right? And then on top of that, they likely know that they're playing with a bunch of new people, and if they're playing with new people, then that means that the new people are probably going to want to run away, right? So they can make the inference then that maybe I should run away. And I think that's mostly what happened here. But yeah, Tyler after was basically saying like, oh, people left me out to dry and stuff like that. But in reality, he needed to make the call a little bit sooner. I think he ultimately acknowledged that. And realistically, this is something, especially on hardcore, you should go over with before the raid gets to the boss, right? Or before you pull the boss at least, because this happens all the time on softcore. I've had this happen in pugs like a ton of times, and there's always the confusion at the end. Some people stay in, some people stay out. And you could really solve this by just being like, look, guys, if it gets close, listen for my call. I'll call if we stay in or if we go out. And that'll at least put it in people's mind, right, that they're waiting for a command. Whereas in this case, they already made the decision beforehand, right, to run it, it seemed like, these people. So obviously, you're not going to be able to get through to them at that point. And the problem is, once they start running, they can't really get back in, which we'll talk about when we get the next POV here, right? So that's kind of my assessment on the Tyler call thing, and we're going to see that highlighted a little bit better in the next clip. So we'll come over here. This is Peekaboo's clip, okay? And so around the same HP on the boss, right? And boss is going down. You see he starts to Nova, so he runs away. Now the call gets made. Pika hears it. I think the call is made already, and he's probably hearing it and processing. Now he's turning around to run back. He's safe at this point, right? At least safe from the Nova. He runs back in. You can see he's 6k health. The first tick, minus 3,300. Okay, so huge damage from the ticking spell at the end here. Then he goes back further, minus 5,500 damage. So, yeah, you don't want to be standing in that. And you can see his reaction. He's pretty shocked. But, it's kind of to be expected. And realistically, if you're telling people to come back in after they've already run out, they're absolutely going to die, and they're not even going to be able to contribute anything to the boss at all. Because they're not even going to be able to get to the boss to do a global. And, Amphi died on this, and he was the only one who kind of had a chance to do anything because he intercepted back in. And that's the right thing to do if you are going to make that play. But you just should never make that play to begin with, obviously, because, it's kind of doomed at this point when a bunch of people already ran out. So, yeah, moral of the story is communicate early, communicate often, and don't run back in once you've already been out, because this will happen to you. But there's also a couple other things that happened in this that I want to talk about. So you can see everybody in the raid has this Ignite mana debuff on them, right? And even the mana users. Now, at this point, the priests are completely tapped. But the reason why they're tapped is because Ignite mana. So my friend gave me the breakdown on dispels here. And it was like Cillian had 13, Hydra had 4, Amanda had 3, Softballs has 1. And, that might not seem too bad if you've done this in your guild and you guys are pretty good. But this was not a fast fight, so he got more than 1 Ignite mana off, I believe. So that means that, the majority of these did not get dispelled. And you can see that's a big problem here because everybody has it, and basically everybody is So everybody is presumably from the Ignite mana. And that's bad in two ways. It's like, number one, there'd be more heals to go around if people weren't right? So some of these people who died to the last tick here could have potentially gotten saved, because remember, some of these warriors have like 7-8k health, right? So in the first hit, or not the first hit, but the hit before is 3,300, then the next tick is 5,500. So although that is lethal in a lot of cases, because they tick very fast to each other, there's definitely going to be cases where enough heals can go out, to potentially save people here, right? So if healers had mana, this could be completely different, and that's basically the priest's fault for not keeping up with the dispels. And again, even though you see that they're pretty much tapped here, they wouldn't be tapped if they just dispelled more early. And particularly, I don't know what Hydra was doing here, because Hydra is like a goated player, and he only had 4 dispels. So that's kind of disappointing for my boy Hydra, but, not to be too much of a hater because he's a god. Things happen sometimes. But realistically, I think sometimes people get into the mentality of like, I've dispelled enough. You know, but Silly Ann here has dispelled 13 ignite manas, and that's good, obviously. But realistically, if other people aren't doing their job, it just means you need to do your job more, if that makes sense, right? So even though you've dispelled 13 times or whatever, you need to continue dispelling. Otherwise, bad things keep happening. I've had times where I basically had to like solo dispel this boss, and yeah, it takes like longer and it wastes a lot of mana because other people aren't dispelling. So while your global is ticking for each dispel, people are hemorrhaging mana. But hey, it's better than them not getting dispelled, right? So a lot more dispels need to go out, and that would have helped here. But another factor too is when they were doing like a VOD review here, they were looking at the boss and they were looking at what percent HP, or not percent, like what raw value HP he was at when he did the final tick of the Nova, which is what killed a bunch of the people. And it was basically like 2k, I think, was his lowest point before the final tick. Like I saw one that was 5k, and then I saw one that looked like it was 2k, and the 5k damage marker that you see here hadn't come up on the screen yet. So that means that the boss only had 2k health left, basically, which means that if any of these mages had like any mana, that's like literally one frostbolt, right? So if these guys would have got dispelled with their ignite manas earlier, and they actually had some mana for the end of this fight, like the fight ends easily. You know what I mean? So forget about the melee running out. Like obviously that's, you know, it'd be preferable if they all stood in and killed the boss, but the call was made late and it is what it is. But the range can be doing damage the whole time. So they had no mana at all. They had no chance. They're probably like wanding at this point. And some of them might even be wanding with a fire wand because, you know, you're not really expecting to be wanding on Baron Geddon to finish him. So they may not have swapped their wand even. And so they might be doing like no damage at all to this boss. And that definitely contributed to the deaths here. So yeah, basically bad call, no dispels, combination for disaster. And the final thing I wanted to talk about was the Mauiwowi bomb situation. So people were also saying that Mauiwowi killed people, and I'm going to go back to the Tyler1 clip to kind of like investigate this, right? So we're going to go back here, and we're going to go a little bit back in time. Jesus, how long does this... Okay, well, we'll see if we can get through this a little bit faster. Okay, so we'll just let the fight play out, right? Positioning on the boss was also kind of an issue that made everything more confusing. That's not really surprising to me though, because Tyler's a new tank, and they often don't understand like how to move the boss properly. So I'm not like really holding that too much against him. This is where he goes back in and takes, again, he takes like what could be close to lethal damage ticks there, but he's getting healed at that time, right? So you know, it's not as big of a deal. But so yeah, they're in the final stages now, and you're gonna see the bomb come out on Mauiwowi, which is the last thing I want to talk about. See living bomb on Mauiwowi. Now, the bomb spot they've been going to is here, but Maui's an experienced player. I don't know how much experience he has doing Classic, but this guy's like a huge Mythic Plus player, I think. He also might be like World First player. I'm not really sure. I played with him before Mythic Plus, but I don't know if he's done Race for World First stuff. I heard that he does, but so he's a good player, basically, is the idea. But what he recognizes here is that I think he thinks this spot is unsafe. Now, the actual like ground area of effect that goes like, so there's two things. There's the actual spot on the ground, and then there's like a kind of like a, it almost looks like a wave that goes out, and the wave goes out farther than the actual ground effect that is showing you where the damage is, right? So we'll kind of play it for a second here. So see how this is red, right? If you're in the red, you're taking damage. But this like gust kind of looks like it goes beyond the red. Like when I hit play again, it's gonna go shoot out like further. So I think he was technically safe to go in the bomb spot, which is right here. However, there's a couple problems, right? So number one, if he's not super familiar with this version of the game, like he's just not gonna know that, and that's like an unreasonable thing to expect him to know, right? He's gonna think like, okay, the boss is out of position, because remember the boss is supposed to be somewhere over here, right? Which makes the bomb spot really clear, but it's not. It's kind of more towards the raid. So now he's thinking the spot is compromised, right? That's number one. But even if he realizes it's not compromised, the problem is that things are kind of going to hell, because since the boss position is up forward, people have moved back instinctively, right? So the whole raid is like in the tunnel, which means that he's not going to have any LOS here, right? If he goes into this wall, so he's not going to be able to get healed. And even though he's a warrior, he has a decent amount of HP. He's 71%, and he's got the bomb. The bomb does probably about 5.5k. So he's probably dead here, or he's very close to being dead if he eats this bomb with like no heals or anything, no pre-shield, right? So he's wanting to stay in a position where he can get some heals at least, right? Like at least like a chain heal balance or something. Anything pretty much helps him live here. And, you know, he might live anyway, even if he doesn't get heals, but he can't know that for sure, right? Because obviously he doesn't play the game enough where he knows for sure all the damage values on these things. So, you know, when you take everything into account, it's not unreasonable for him to kind of run back here instead of going into the bomb spot. And what really needs to happen is these people need to keep retreating backwards, right? Like once they realize that, you know, this is everything's gone bad, they need to start running away. But the problem is Tyler called for people to stay in, right? So the problem is now people's attention is still focused on the boss, right? You have some people who already ran out, so the boss is not dying fast enough, okay? So the boss isn't going to die like well before the bomb goes off. That'd be the best case scenario, right? Because then people could be like, okay, you know, they're at least over here, and then he can get into maybe the corner over here or something like that. That doesn't happen because the boss is still alive. So people are trying to finish the boss, and as you see, we're going to slow it down a little bit. But Maui starts running towards the group here, but he's smart about it. He's hanging onto the wall, right? And he's going to try and run like... He runs into this. You can see him. It's still on him right there. And he runs around this corner. So he's trying to create as much distance as possible from the raid while still being on their raid frames as like targetable. Okay? So it's really great play by him in my opinion. Especially considering he doesn't play Classic. But it was good on him to realize that he probably has a chance of dying here. You know, because he's not going to get heals. But unfortunately, they don't kill Baron. And the fact that Baron is still alive here... and these people are so critical, everybody's attention is still super focused on Baron, and they have no idea that he is over here with the bomb, I think is the main problem. So we're going to continue to play it, and you're going to see... So the first thing that happens is you know, this last Nova goes out, right? Tyler dies, Pika dies, Mir and somebody else dies. And then you're going to see the secondary wave of death, which is going to come from the bomb in a moment here, right? So Maui's at 74%. And you're about to see a bunch of people just get super chunked and die from the bomb, right? And he actually goes down to 28%, so he must have had a ton of health, honestly. So I guess he could have just ran into this corner, because technically this corner was safe. But, you know, you can't really blame him for that, again, because... he just doesn't have the knowledge that he's going to be able to live that. And intuitively, he wants to be in a spot where he can at least get heals, right? So I think the decision to go back there was fine where he was. And it wasn't really his fault. The other people needed to run away from him. Just lack of awareness on their part. He should have been also in Discord saying for people to get away from him. But, you know, maybe he was muted. Or maybe... he didn't want to distract what was from going on in front, and he thought he was far enough away from people. But the bomb range can be deceptively big. So, yeah, just kind of unfortunate scenario there for the people who died to the bomb. Not really much he could have done. I think it was ultimately a good call to kind of go where he went, and it just didn't really work out because there was too much chaos. People weren't paying attention. But, yeah, so it was basically a bad call from Tyler's part there. A late call. The call was fine, but it was too late, right? And once the call is late, you kind of have to abandon it. You can't expect people to go back in. And bad dispels for the most part, except Cillian was kind of carrying a little bit, but overall it just needed way more dispels, and then people would have had more mana, right? And again, it's really the DPS having more mana, because the fight wouldn't have even gotten to this position if the DPS just had more mana, right? Like, people were like way too fast, And even if they weren't completely they were probably so close to that it changes how you play, changes the types of spell you use. So, yeah, if the spells would have went out, this fight would have been killed as well. And just kind of like a sloppy fight overall. And that's what happens when you're just a little bit too sloppy and hardcore, just like these kind of mundane things that, normally aren't that big a deal. If suddenly 2 or 3 of them kind of go the wrong way, now you've lost your character that, you've invested so much time in. So, yeah, it sucks. Sucks the people that are involved, but it was entertaining to watch. And, I don't know. I guess they'll be back next time. I'm not sure if Tyler's re-leveling, but it'll be interesting to see the raid that's happening tomorrow under Miskiff, and I'll react to that if anything funny happens in that too. But yeah, I just wanted to, make a video on this because I thought it would be fun. And I think a lot of people are blaming the wrong people and stuff. Like, they're calling the people who ran out roaches, which they weren't. Just the call was too late. They're flaming Mauiwowi. That's incorrect. He made pretty much the right call. And a lot of people are forgetting about the dispels completely, which is not the most obvious component, but like I said, it pretty much ensures this boss dies if people actually have any bit of mana left. So that's basically that. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like stuff like this, like, comment, and subscribe. More guides and stuff will be coming out soon. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.